Welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast, a podcast for creatives. I'm your host, Tammy Takeishi. Join me for compelling conversations with artists, actors, authors, musicians, and other creatives about the impact of the creative and fine arts in their lives and our ever-changing world. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast. My name is Tammy Takeishi. Today's guest is multi-talented musician Steven Hackman, most recently known for his evocative works which synthesize classical composers with modern musicians, such as Brahms versus Radiohead, Bartók versus Björk, and Beethoven versus Coldplay. He is a graduate of the prestigious Curtis Institute, and beginning in the 2019-2020 season, he serves as creative director of the Indianapolis Symphony Stella Artois Happy Hour series, one of the most successful millennial-focused concert experiences in the country. It's an honor to have Steven Hackman on the show today. If you haven't had the chance to hear one of his works, particularly his orchestral tone poems, such as Brahms versus Radiohead, then you're in for a musical treat. His works are profound reimaginings that one can listen to and appreciate for hours on end and still find nuances and get chills with each listen. Welcome, Steven, to Creative Piecemeal Podcast.
Well, hello. Thanks for such a wonderful introduction, Tammy. Great to be here.
You're welcome. Great to have you on the show. We'll get started with who or what inspired you to become a musician?
Oh, wow. My parents bought a piano when I was 8 years old, and I just sort of started to play it. So I guess that's a difficult question. I don't know. I think I was just very drawn to it, it was always just sort of inside me. As I, aged, I think, or got older, I should say, aged, I was just very inspired by all different types of music. So when I was growing up, I was listening to classical music and sort of discovering that on my own, but also, pulling my dad and my mom's LPs off the walls or the cassette tapes and, discovering everything from the Beatles to what was going on the radio with house music in Chicago to rap and hip hop. And, so it was always like part of my musical journey. I always say they were working in tandem, sort of classical and popular music.
And you still continue to play piano to this day?
I do. I mean, I would not consider myself a concert pianist, but I play piano daily because composing is really one of the main activities of mine musically these days. And I compose at the piano. So yeah, that's a huge part of my musical sort of environment.
Can you tell us a little more about some of your favorite part of the creative process and the composition process?
Wow, the initial is very emotional, honestly. And I always find that when I'm writing, if I'm not having an emotional connection, if I don't have some sort of it's this kind of revelatory, or I don't know if you want to say cosmic. It's a moment when you're conceiving something where I think you have a chance to appreciate what it might become, and whether it might become something that's true and real and emotional, I guess, and reflective of the human experience and of who I am, I guess. And that's something that I am very thankful for, and that's part of why you keep coming back, to have that moment. Now you have to it has to be fleshed out from there, it has to be worked through from there. And it might not become what you hoped it would be. Oftentimes it doesn't, but again, that's another thing that keeps us coming back. But that initial improvisatory moment is very special to me. That's a practice. That is a huge part of my life, but then working it through is a thrill as well. So it's funny because the eventual realization of the piece, that's a different kind of thrill. A lot of creatives will talk about, well, what are you more addicted to? Is it the rush of writing it in the process, or is it the final product and the realization? So I appreciate all the parts, but that initial phase and the working through phase are special.
I can completely understand that as a person who, has written music in the past, and I also creatively write. There's definitely a rush and a spark when you've got an idea at the beginning.
Definitely. Yeah, that rush and that spark. Yeah, those are a big part of my life.
Can you tell us a little more about some of your current projects?
Well, since COVID hit, I have had, like many people, I've had limitless amounts of creative time, which actually is an incredible blessing, disguised amongst this catastrophic situation that the world finds itself in. So the first thing I did was I wanted to revise. I have a Beethoven versus Coldplay production, and I had in the back of my mind for the last few years, we've been playing that show a lot, and I wanted to give it some bigger moments. That show stays very contained in the sort of Beethoven language, and it never kind of breaks into that epic sort of Coldplay soundscape. And that was by design. I mean, I wanted to use the orchestration of the Eroica Symphony, which is, almost a chamber orchestra, certainly could be a chamber orchestra. But as we were talking about the piece BRAHMS versus Radiohead before we started, I mean, that piece gets extremely epic and grandiose. And I just thought, well, could I use the Beethoven instrumentation, but could I, add some moments to this Beethoven versus Coldplay? So I also added the piano, so I'll switch off between the piano and conducting, and just playing some kind of Coldplay things and maybe adding a cadenza. But so I revised that and added about 15 minutes to that piece, added 4 more Coldplay songs. And I'm real excited about that, to sort of teach the singers the new version and play that new version. Then I wrote another orchestra production called Bohemian Rhapsody in Blue, which is Queen versus Gershwin.
That sounds wonderful already. Sign me up.
Oh, great. So that's done. That's in the can. And that came out of, I did these kind of weekly shows for the first couple of months, and called it Sundays with Steve, and just did, kind of fun pairings, and just played piano repertoire and combined it with songs, and poorly sung songs. But it was just a chance to, just kind of play some music. But actually it spawned some ideas, like the Bohemian Rhapsody in Blue. And so finished that. Also got some really good work on a John Mayer show done that I think I'll complete, John Mayer versus Bach. So that again came out of the Sundays with Steve thing. And then I turned to writing a musical, because I've always wanted to write a musical, and got sort of that off the ground, and wrote dozens and dozens of songs for the musical, and sort of wrote a sketch for a musical. And so that project is now kind of, I guess, in development. I'm looking for the right collaborative partner to help with that, because a musical takes a lot of different talents to bring it to fruition. So, and then, scoring some short films. I met this choreographer on the Kanye West project who's phenomenal, and he brought me into a very exciting worldwide dance project, producing 15 films and writing music for 3 of them. So that was extremely exciting, because the talent level is outstanding on that. So that'll launch in January, and Lincoln Center is our partner for that. It's called Films.Dance. And then now I'm working on sort of a new project of my own original music, which is kind of, there's just kind of a handful of songs that I've written over the past few years that I thought could be grouped together from a genre perspective and a production perspective. And it kind of falls into the kind of pop electronic, space, kind of the Daft Punk thing, or the Weeknd, or, so I'm working on that now.
Oh, I think it's wonderful to hear that you've really utilized every moment to let your creativity blossom and explore things that you wouldn't get to if the world was sort of in a different state right now.
Well, I have to, just to keep my sanity, but also I think you make a very good point. As creatives, we get ideas all the time, and we can't act on them sometimes. And especially, we're all professionals, and we have, there's life, and people have families and all these things. And there are many reasons why we can't get to these projects. First of all, we need to just survive and put bread on the table. And so I'm out conducting concerts, but all the things that I've done since COVID hit, they were all those ideas that I just kind of had in my phone, notes and voice memos and all these things that, at some point in time I wanted to do, but just could never get around to. And it has been amazing to finally get around to them. And who knows what's going to happen with them. But to get them off the ground, and to now say, yeah, I've got a musical, it's in development. I can show you the deck. I can show you the playlist of 15 songs. And that feels good. So I've been very thankful for the time. I have been.
It sounds like 2021 is going to be an epic year for you.
I think for everybody.
Very true. Very true.
Let's hope. Yeah.
And you live a very creative life. And like you said, we creatives are blessed to be able to do what we want to do for a living. That doesn't always happen for everyone. But in your own words, what does living a creative life mean to you?
Wow, that's an incredible question. Well, I think first of all, it means being honest and true and authentic to who you are. as, the unique individual you are that has had a path that no one else has had, and listening to your true creative voice, being fearless about following it, and about honoring your originality and your uniqueness, and being daring and realizing it, and ignoring critics and ignoring trends and judgment, and being disciplined. You can't turn that on and off. At least for me, it's every day trying to stay, of course, curious and open-minded. And I don't know, you have to, I think as time goes on, you have to work really hard to do all those things and not become jaded, and to truly appreciate the gift of being able to be creative.
That's a very beautiful answer, and I completely concur. It takes a while to find our voices, figuratively speaking and literally speaking, in terms of musicality and creativity and where we want to go in life, whether it's a career path or whether it's a project you want to follow, or maybe you want to switch gears and learn a whole new instrument or try a whole new collaboration. And there's a risk in that, but it's also something so beautiful to be able to express yourself, create in whatever creative manner that is, and just feel that that's yourself on paper, or that's yourself in music, or that's yourself, on a record.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, during this time, I've become even more connected with the outdoors, especially through hiking and biking. I live out here in LA, and one of the reasons I love it so much is just the analogy, how kind of similar I view the process of, mountain biking or hiking, climbing a mountain. I mean, it's such a cliche, but you see, a peak, you think it's the peak, you kind of summit, and then you get to the top there, and then you see like, okay, this is just one step along the way. This was like just the junior, then you see another one, and it just keeps going on and on. And, just the twists and turns and the unexpected period. And so that's, I don't know, every day when I'm out there, it has become very important to me. And I don't know, just kind of a whiny train of thought there, but.
Well, even, Beethoven took walks in the woods, and we all know how great he is too, So I think there's definitely something to be said from getting inspiration from nature, or even just being able to reconnect with the earth and just slow down for a while. That'll get our brain flowing in a more creative way.
Well, definitely. I mean, Beethoven's a great example. Beethoven sought to sort of realize the perfection that God had achieved in nature through his own music. That was sort of his goal, and that's why the outdoors meant so much to him. And there's a lot there. I think that's quite an aspiration, but there's so much out there to appreciate. And that's why I feel very lucky to live out here. I moved back from New York right before COVID hit. And have just been appreciative of being out here where I can hike and bike every day.
It sounds like you get a lot of inspiration from nature, but where have been other sources of inspiration for your projects come from?
Well, I'm inspired by other artists for sure. And that's I think that's one of the great joys in life, the great comforts in life, that you're never going to run out of incredible literature and art and music to discover. And similarly, as far as nature, you're never going to run out of breathtaking vistas, and so those things inspire me. Other brilliant artists inspire me, whether they're from generations past or contemporary. Being active is really important to me from a creative standpoint too, because it always kind of re-energizes my day creatively, because I'll obviously, just like many, I'll do my first session in the morning into, the afternoon, into the mid-afternoon, and then you're at that point in time, you're generally pretty fried. And so that's when I can start to move to get outside. And then when I get back from that, and it doesn't have to be outside. Like when I was in New York, it was just going to the gym. But I would always then have another fresh creative session of a couple hours following the gym. So it was important, that time is important in many ways.
We already talked about some of your current projects, but one of your projects from before, BRAHMS versus RADIOHEAD, is one of my personal favorites. I think it's because it's the first one that I discovered and heard. I've definitely listened to it a lot, but one of my favorites is Let Down. And I was wondering if you could talk a little more about what went into that project and what inspired it. Have you always been a lifelong Radiohead fan?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll never forget hearing OK Computer for the first time. We were on tour. I was in an a cappella group in my undergraduate at the University of Illinois called the Other Guys, and we traveled around and toured around a lot. And my sophomore year, my friend Brian, who's the director of the group, put on OK Computer, and I listened to it, cover to cover every day that year. And interestingly, it was the next year that I was then preparing for, I think the next year I was then preparing for my Juilliard and Curtis auditions, which was the Brahms First Symphony. So they sort of occupied the same space in my musical memory in kind of a strange way. But yeah, Radiohead fan, diehard Radiohead fan for life, seen him live many times. And, as a classical musician, I was always looking for ways to incorporate Radiohead's music. And I was always listening to this band and just thinking how many of my classical colleagues I want to try to get into that music, like I'm sure you've done. So many of us have done, because of the brilliance and the creativity and the avant-garde and compositional nature of the music. So, but that project came about quickly. I was at the Indianapolis Symphony. We had a happy hour program. And at the beginning, when I was at Indianapolis, I shared the creative directorship of this series with this group called Time for Three, who I'm very close to and I'd gone to school with. And at the beginning, we were all kind of the creative directors together, but it was a 4-concert series throughout the year, and they were only able to be on 2 of the concerts because they were traveling and they were on the road. So this concert was coming up. Time for Three wasn't able to do it. We only had like 2 months until the concert. We had nothing for it. I knew that the orchestra was playing Brahms' First Symphony a couple of weeks before this concert. Therefore, they would be prepared with the piece. And since we don't have a lot of rehearsal time on happy hour, or on that series, that's a consideration, how much new repertoire you're going to take on. And so I just pitched this idea of like, let's combine the Brahms Symphony with Radiohead. I mean, it was a pretty quick thing. I mean, I knew they were playing Brahms 1. I loved that work. I had that work, well memorized because of like all the way back to my audition at Curtis. And then, OK Computer, I just jogged my memory, or in my mind, I just thought like, okay, what's the best album? And OK Computer just jumped out, and that was that. Like, I think it was a concept even before I hit the piano and started working on it. I just thought it could work. Prior to that, I had made a lot of kind of mini mashups of all sorts of classical repertoire with popular songs, but this was one of the first kind of large scale undertakings. So that's how it came about.
That's really neat. And it also sounds like it's almost fate that it worked out that way.
I would say so, yeah. But how fate is. It's like you're looking for it, if you're prepared for it. And so, yeah, that first Brahms Radio was just a lot of fun. Bringing the singers in, Andrew, Bill, and it was Kristen at that time.
Do you have a favorite project that you've worked on, or would you say that they're all your favorite projects?
Yeah, I'd say they're all my favorite. That is, I'm certainly not sick of any of them. And these days we do a lot of Brahms versus Radioheads. We do a lot of Beethoven Coldplays. The others are all kind of, they're way distant 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th place as far as how often they're played. Those are the 2 popular ones. Tchaikovsky versus Drake, we've done quite a few times. But anyway, no, I love doing them. I'm still not sick of doing those top 2 ones, even though we played them a lot. And I'm thankful for that. And if that ever changes, then maybe we'll start having other conductors do it, or kind of let an orchestra play it without me. But right now, I love being attached to them.
If you had an unlimited budget for your projects, what do you think you would like to do next?
Okay. Wow, that's another great. Well, you're amazing questions, Tammy. Unlimited budget. Well, here's one thing that comes to mind. I want to do a Rite of Spring based piece. I would like to combine the Rite of Spring with Kanye West's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy album. And if I had an unlimited budget, I would call up all my favorite friends and incredible players from across the country and fly them to, the most incredible venue. We would hire the most incredible production designer, and we would create a set. It would be a multimedia experience. There would be installations in the lobby. I could go on and on about this one, but that's such a big orchestra, of course, the Rite of Springs. That's why I go to that one. And then I of course would call Kanye and get him to come. I don't have his phone number, unfortunately, but I can't get a hold of him, I think, or I have an old number. So he probably changes them every month. Yeah, that'd be fun.
That sounds like it would be really fantastic, very intense. You'd almost have yourself a festival going on there,
Yeah, I mean, a festival would be fun. Well, you just took it a step further. That's what I should do. If it's unlimited budget, it should be, a week-long festival every year. I mean, this is kind of like the Aladdin and the lamp. Like, I'm wishing for more wishes now, but I would wish for an annual renewing festival in an incredible space, week long, where 2 concerts a day. One is an orchestra fusion, and one is something else. Maybe it's my work, maybe it's friends of mine's work, maybe it's a melange of all sorts of things.
I know it's a wish, but I think you should hang on to that and make that a goal.
Yeah, no, that would be fun. I will hold on to it for sure.
I'll hold you to it. I'll hold your feet to the fire there.
Great.
So speaking of, unlimited budgets, but now we're going to go the opposite direction, like back to humble beginnings. What is something you wish you had known when you first started out?
For several years there, it wasn't that easy. I mean, there were several years before I even came up with this whole fusion idea, or before that whole idea really emerged out of my work with Time for Three and others. But let's just take it from there. I mean, once we started to play things like BRAHMS versus Radiohead with orchestras around, I mean, the reception was very mixed. I mean, from the audience perspective, we've always done really well. I think that's why this whole thing made it. Otherwise, I'd be doing something else, or I'd be just conducting classical concerts, I think. But the orchestra's reception was always very mixed, and it ranged from really negative to, that was all right. And there were 2 things happening. When a conductor's on the podium, you're always absorbing the energy of the players. And that's true for any conductor, whether they're just conducting the Beethoven Ninth Symphony or Brahms versus Radiohead. In the beginning, it was very difficult for me to separate out what I was feeling, because I was a young conductor who never really had much conducting experience outside of going to Curtis and going to Aspen. Like I wasn't the assistant conductor of this orchestra, then the resident conductor of this orchestra, then the associate. I didn't climb that ladder. I went into doing this. So there were a lot of lessons I didn't learn. But then I was conducting my own work, and that work was very controversial, and that work was offensive to many. So it was really hard in the beginning for me to separate out all of the energy, all the feedback I was getting, and categorize it to, okay, this is because this particular player is offended by Brahms versus Radiohead, or this is because this player doesn't know how to react to what I'm doing physically, on the podium. Just a lot of stuff to sift through. And that took a few years, but the better I got, and therefore the more myself I started to be, and the truer I was to who I was as a person, as an artist, and as a conductor, and the more I just got back to being me, the better it got. And finally the corner was turned. But yeah, I'd like to go back and sort of tell myself, it's not all your fault.
Thank you for sharing that. Musicians don't always share about their struggles, or about how, it definitely takes, like climbing a mountain, like you said, sometimes to get to success.
That's what it's all about to me. I mean, anytime I talk to a young musician, or, anytime we do a masterclass, or I always say it's, your career is made by the rejections. That's just, I feel so strongly about that. It's not the yeses, it's the nos. And it's how you then react, and it's how you pivot, it's how you self-evaluate, how you improve, how you diversify. I mean, whatever you want to say, it's the metal that you develop from all the no's, and it's how opportunistic you are with the time that is gifted to you when you get a no. Because when you apply for a job and you don't get it, you get all that time back. You would have had COVID not hit, there's a chance I might have been around the world, conducting and composing operas for Kanye West all year, because that was his ambition and that's what we talked about. Well, that didn't happen. So that's not a rejection per se, but it's, so what do you do with the time? I think that's what separates the people that are successful with people that aren't.
I completely agree there. And I think there's a common myth, with creatives that it's not, doesn't seem as hard. Like in the movies, or TV shows, people are like, oh, I just got into this music school, or I just signed a record deal, or, like the character, or the character's like, oh, I just got a best-selling novel. It's so much harder. People don't always realize how into being a creative artist. And I think that people are realizing it a little bit more with the pandemic, with the shift, with concerts being canceled or being rescheduled or via streaming platforms, or, movie theaters being shut down. Like their avenues of being able to seek entertainment are shutting down traditionally, and then people are having to find new ways and are, I think, in some ways appreciating the arts more because they couldn't have it. They can't access it in ways that they were used to.
I'd agree with that. I think it has heightened appreciation of the arts for sure, artistic institutions and the arts themselves as presentations, exhibits, etc. But then also I think it has increased appreciation for artists and just appreciation for the life of an artist, because I think a lot of people are like, whoa, wow, you can't perform now? What are you going to do? So yeah, maybe that's some good that can come out of this as well.
Once things get back to normal, what do you think is going to be the first thing you'll do?
Well, one of the most important things that's happened for me during this time is sort of the realization and the resolution that I'm a composer first and I'm a creative first. And, for the past 6 or 7 years, I've really wanted to get, the sort of these fusion works and my concert work and my conducting work off the ground. And granted, those are productions that I'm sort of conceiving and creating, but I'm quite resolved when life hopefully returns to remain creative and to make space for my own music. And I know it's going to be hard, but it's very important to me to make that time and to make that space. And really it just starts with to accept that as my identity and to not let it be, the undercard, so to speak. And I'm looking forward to finding ways to do that and to accomplish that. And Lord knows there's a lot of music that I'm looking forward to putting out there. I mean, I'm sitting on so much original things because in the last few years, I haven't had the bandwidth to really properly market it or properly do anything with it. So I've instead just kept it to myself instead of just letting, throw it out there and, just let it be a tiny little drop in the ocean because I'm not calling attention to it or no entity is calling attention to it. So I can't wait to perform again. I miss it. Some of my artist friends are talking about how, going out on the road again actually doesn't seem so great to them because they've enjoyed being home so much. I mean, I love being home. I'm an introverted kind of homebody person anyway, but I definitely miss traveling and performing and meeting new orchestras and meeting new audiences and all that. So I can't wait to combine that with more of my own creative work.
Would you say your creative process has altered since we've all had to take more time?
I wouldn't. Just have had more extended time, more extended uninterrupted time. But no, I don't think the process has altered.
That sounds like a good thing though, that you're solid in your process and how you make music and how you create, because sometimes that's a hurdle all on its own, is finding what works for you.
Well, I think it's always evolving, but yeah, I think the last couple of years, it's just been so busy with concerts that, you grab the few weeks you've got and we plan for me to have writing periods as well. So I don't want to make it seem like I've been so busy that I can only grab a day or two, here and there. I mean, but to have the uninterrupted time has been fantastic. But it's about now kind of bringing these things to life again. It's like, hey, I didn't spend 5 months on a musical just for it to sit there. Like it's on me to continue to move these things forward.
It definitely sounds like you like to, push boundaries and explore new things. What is something in your field, whether it's conducting or in music or composing, that you're most curious about to learn?
Well, since you're asking me that question today, and since right now I'm working on this, new project of original music that, again, from a genre perspective is in the electronic and pop sphere, I'm definitely wanting to become a better producer, a more adept mixer, so spending time with more YouTube tutorials and, getting to know some of the software instruments and some of the very powerful mechanisms I have at my disposal in my computer for making kind of in the box music. And also I'll just be learning, I'll get a team of people on this project that I can just learn from and watch. But yeah, that's something I'm really curious about right now, and having a lot of fun listening to, so much music that is sort of in those genres that I mentioned, and just learning from the productions or from the writing, and then applying those things.
It sounds like it would be really fun to just sort of exploring what you can do from the comfort of your own home with a computer to make music and be creative.
That's what's been going on in the pop sphere for, the last decade. And there are just incredibly brilliant people that I think have grown up now with laptops and with tablets, and are just whiz kids at this. And so I'm pumped to get a few of those guys and gals on my project and learn from them.
And speaking of the different artists that you enjoy listening to, if someone peeked into your CD collection, what would they be most surprised that you listen to?
Well, surprise. Okay, that's a good one. Gosh, we're in the holidays right now, so that's hard. There's definitely surprises in the holidays regard, but I'm a Christmas music nut, so I explore all that. I like some country songs. I don't know if there's a country artist. I've got some like Jake Owen songs on my playlist, and I've got some Florida Georgia Line and Brooks and Dunn. So those might be surprises. But those are just like isolated songs. It's not like I have listened to albums of those guys. Maybe the musical theater stuff would be a surprise. I mean, I did such a huge deep dive on musical theater this year. When I looked at my Spotify, top 5 came back. And did you have your Spotify experience where it showed you your year?
It did, and I really loved it. My top 5, I was surprised by.
Really? Yeah, that's a great thing that they do. That's like Spotify should like market that, because it's so, I think everybody's just like, it's just, so everyone's so into themselves that it's like, oh my God, tell me what I listen to. So it's like, we all just, I don't know, they tapped into such an amazing kind of instinct there with that. But yeah, when what was the song that was playing, like when you opened yours up?
I can't remember the name of it, but it was a Ben Rector song. I've listened to a lot of him lately. He's a singer-songwriter, pianist from Oklahoma. He did the Thanksgiving song this year. I don't know if you've looked it up, but it's so clever and really sweet.
Nice. Yeah, the song that played when I opened mine up was this this amazing song from the musical Evita. I don't even know what the song's called, because I've just never looked at like the track list of the Evita soundtrack. I just listened to it on like many bike rides. It's one particular song that I love though in that show. Such a cool, a really crafty composition. That's the thing that played. And then like Hamilton, was like number 4 on my list, which like, I don't know how I feel about that, but it shows that I was listening to it a whole hell of a lot, and I was learning from it, because there's a lot to learn from in that thing.
I love musicals, although I must say one of my favorites is still The Music Man. Robert Preston singing the part of The Music Man. Oh, it's fantastic.
Oh, nice. That's one that I did not go back to during this time. I never did it in high school, but I knew it. I know the show pretty well. And of course, there are incredible songs in that show. Yeah.
Musicals are fantastic. And I guess living in New York, you had a chance to see some of them back when you lived there?
I was involved in musical theater in high school. And I was in the shows in high school, and, super close with my choir director in high school, who I was developing this musical with, or am still developing this musical with. But then once college hit, and once, classical music really took over for me, or became very important, and once I started to get like that kind of high level classical training, the musical world just fell off for me. So it had been decades since I listened to this stuff. And so no, in fact, it's an awful shame when Bill Brohn, who was a very famed Broadway orchestrator and composer. He orchestrated Ragtime and Wicked and Miss Saigon. He was a friend of ours, of Time for Threes and mine. And he actually advised us at the Indianapolis Symphony on our first season, and he has since passed away. But when I lived in New York, he would always tell me, like, just let me know when you want to, and I never went and saw Wicked. So no, I didn't see the only musical I saw in New York, I think, I saw Book of Mormon with my sister when she came visit, and we had a riot there. It was so fun. We had the time of our lives. It was so fun.
Book of Mormon is fantastic. Such great writing. And that's a great example of an out-of-the-box kind of musical for sure. But man, who knew that Trey Parker and Matt Stone could write music so well?
Well, yeah.
It always shocks me every time.
I'm pretty sure there's another writer involved there. But yeah, those guys are genius. Unbelievable.
Speaking of creative people, if you could have dinner with any creative, let's say 3 creative people, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, dead or alive. Wow. All right. I'm trying. This is interesting, because I'm trying to think of dynamics. What's somebody that's alive in there? So easy to the people that have passed on. Like there's a long list there. Okay, but I'm gonna say Hemingway, Stravinsky, and Wes Anderson. That'd be pretty good, I think.
That sounds fantastic. I'd like to come to that dinner.
I was thinking John Lennon, Chopin's a big one. I would like Chopin to be at the piano entertaining. Is that okay? Is that possible?
Yes, we can make that happen.
So one entertainer, Chopin's at the piano improvising. All right, that's for sure. We got Hemingway, Steinbeck. That'd be good too. Fitzgerald. I mean,
Hemingway could mix the drinks.
Hemingway, yeah. I feel like he's just the guy for that. Okay, so, but Picasso would be pretty amazing too. I think Stravinsky, yeah. David Byrne is a huge one. Anyhow, there's a lot.
That sounds like it would be wonderful, though. It's definitely a tough question because, like you said, there's so many wonderful artists who've passed on, and also so many wonderful artists who are still with us today. But yeah, I agree on Hemingway. And Chopin for sure.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, if you could step into my shoes as a podcaster, what is one thing you would have asked yourself that I did not ask?
Wow. Well, I would have asked, since it's the holidays, what are your top holiday albums?
Let's go for it.
You know what? I listened to the other night a little bit of the Boston Pops, one of their Christmas albums. It's just outstanding. I mean, I'd say conducting that orchestra was a great honor and thrill. They were fantastic. But so the Boston Pops are in there for sure. Carpenter's Christmas Portrait, great arrangements, great orchestrations, and amazing performance. That's I think a stunning album. The group Chanticleer, who I've been so blessed to work with, and I love them so much. They have an album called Sing Me Christmas. They have many holiday albums because holidays they're big time, but Sing Me Christmas is outstanding. Bing Crosby, gotta go with Bing Crosby. There's a lot.
I must say, I didn't realize you liked holiday music so much, but I'm assuming one of your favorites is also the one like the Snoopy, Vince Grimaldi trio.
Oh yeah, Vince Grimaldi trio one's amazing. That was great. I mean, as a composer, as a songwriter, and I guess having been raised Catholic, and celebrating Christmas, it's kind of like it's the perfect combo. And just loving the holiday season. I mean, I've had, as a musician, I've done so many things. I've played so many gigs, from, piano gigs from the age of 13 all the way into my when I was at Curtis, they would send me out on all these holiday parties, swing choir gigs, holiday gigs when I was in high school, and when I was singing in the other guys, it's so, in Christmas concerts, I don't know, it's a special phase. Well, it's a very unique phase for any kind of performing musician because it's kind of its own little genre. And we can get away with things that we don't usually get away with. It's way cheesier, it's over the top. So yeah.
Definitely worth it though. Such a wonderful, lush sound for the holidays, puts you in a fuzzy, warm and fuzzy mood,
And the orchestra's always, it's so funny, because you listen to all these artists' holiday album and it's the orchestra always is called upon, and what is it about Christmas that makes us want strings and all these? It's so funny. It's like film scores and Christmas are the 2 times we need orchestras.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It was an absolute joy to have you and talking about your creative process and the things that you're doing. Where can people find you on social media?
Instagram is Steve Hackman Music. And Facebook is also Steve Hackman Music. Twitter, I'm not very active on, so that's not a good place to go. And then on YouTube, you can search, I think my YouTube channel is Steve Hackman Music as well. And many of these productions that we've mentioned are on there. The Beethoven Coldplays is on YouTube. The BRAHMS versus Radiohead, Bartok Bjork, Tchaikovsky Drake, all those are up there. And my website's actually a really great place to go to because it's in the music section of the website. All the different productions are listed and the albums and the collaborative relationships I've got, and you can just kind of click them and it takes you to different portals for each one.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we'll be posting your website in the show notes for people to find you and connect to your music more after listening to the podcast. That's all for our show today. Thanks for listening to Creative Piecemeal Podcast. As always, we can be found on all the major podcast players And you can also follow us on Instagram, Creative Piecemeal Podcast. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like the show? Have a question? Stop by the Facebook and Instagram pages. Links are in the show notes, or search for Creative Piecemeal Podcast on social media and click follow for all the latest.